well, I got to tell you, it really threw me a curve on this one. You know, it's I mean, I know it was on the list, but it was like it was such a small niche, that youth market that we were hitting, that was much younger than the audience that we had been hitting. I mean, I cut my teeth on rock and roll and, Jesus Christ Superstar, the Rolling Stones, all that stuff. Uh, and, this one was a much younger audience, and it was really, they had a big fan base of young kids. And, so my thinking, well, I should sort of back up for a second. And, I guess, where it starts is, after, having started our own company in 1972, Pacific Pioneer, Bill Levy, and we had talked about him many times before in the shows we've done, was a big supporter and a real friend. I mean, he took me under his wing the same way a guy named Mike Harrington took me under his wing, and Todd Thompson at Nestle, and taught me how to become about marketing and the importance of marketing and strategy and tactics and things like that. Because I didn't know that. I was a designer. I mean, we took direction from either the person that was the account executive, or, in our case, a lot of times we were the people directly. My partner, Tony, and our other partner, Lou, in the beginning, they were the ones that dealt with a lot of the acts. And they would take their feedback and then give it to us, adding what they thought about it, and always being clear about that. Always being clear about, this is what the client asked for. This is what the client told us. And here's what I think. They're two separate things. And I think a lot of the problems that a lot of ad agencies still to this day have is that communication, that link between the account executive and the creative department. There's a lot of, I mean, there are cases where they just go listen to what the client said and they forget about that and come back with just their, opinion of what they thought it would be, because they, figured they could do it better than us, or they took their spin on it and added their, their piece to it, which was something that was really a strong thing for Pacific Pioneer. My partner, Tony, and I had a communication where he would listen to the group if I wasn't there, and he would tell me exactly what the group wanted and what they thought. And then, oh, by the way, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? Because you never know where that idea is going to come from. Okay, like the album that we're going to talk about today, in the Kids of Sesame Street. I mean, I'm sorry, not Kids of Sesame Street. Well, because we're going to talk about that in a minute, because this was the first one to that younger audience. And then we went down to an even younger audience a year later with the first Sesame Street live album. And it was, I mean, so you're talking about going from kids that are kindergarten and first and second, third grade up to, kids that are 10 and 11 for the Brady Bunch, or for the Brady Bunch. And so and then we have the rock and roll piece, which is a much older audience. So a lot of times, as fantastic as Bill Levy was as a creative director, he was on this one, he was at a loss. He called us up. He said, we have this project. Okay, we've tried to come up with some stuff here. They don't like it. It's not in our wheelhouse. And so let me give it to you when I'm like, hey, okay, Bill, thank you very much. I mean, we were just getting started at Pacific Pioneer. This is, 1972, and we had just opened our doors, not, a lot, but rock and roll based on an older audience. And, so he sort of, and he was older than I was, and so he just tossed it to us. And so it's really funny because, after having all the rock and roll stuff that we had done up to then with the, Jesus Christ Superstar, the Grand Funk and the Rolling Stones song and Alice Cooper, and all of a sudden we get this, this project for an audience that's much younger than we've been appealing to. And but luckily I had some experience to draw from, because I mentioned before in one of the other interviews that one of the freelance clients that I had in New York was a guy named Nick Scalisi from Scholastic Book. And Scholastic Book was that book that you got when you were in elementary school, that magazine that you could order all your books from, and it was just really great. You could wait to get them. They bring, you mail them back to school, and it was really a great experience. And so I had a lot of, um, experience, not a whole lot, but because I was doing the covers for the magazines and working with Nick. And so I learned a lot about that. And so thinking about that and drawing from that kind of an experience to that younger kid, and being a younger kid myself at one point, as we all were, I wanted to figure out what would be appealing to that audience and still reach a broader audience too. I mean, it would be always nice to get a little bit younger, because when you're younger, you want to be a little bit older. And when you're a little bit older, you want to be a little bit older, until you reach 21, and then it all goes downhill quick. But because all the other stuff is done, all the anticipation and waiting and wishing and hoping, all that's already done by that time. So, I thought about using a, a rebus puzzle, where you take letters and images to create a thought, to create a sentence or a thought. And I mean, that would be a pretty cool thing, because it's like crossword puzzles for a little bit older audience, where they have that challenge of, trying to figure out what it is and what it says. And to the younger audience, they really love that kind of thing. A Scholastic Book was filled with, those magazines were filled with that kind of stuff. Aside from selling the books, we would have puzzles, and we would have all kinds of things in the magazine to keep the kids' interest. So to me, taking the songs and breaking them into rebus kind of words would be an interesting way to go. And there was a staff illustrator who worked with us probably for almost a year, a guy named Joe Patagno. And you may not know that name, but I guarantee you've seen his work. He worked with us for about a year. We did a bunch of stuff together. And he went off to England. He worked on the Alan Eldridge illustrated Beatles book. And then he became an album cover. He started doing album covers more. And he did all the Motorhead covers and other bands, that heavy metal look. He is the Drew Struzan of heavy metal in Europe. Okay, every heavy metal band aspires to have Joe do work for him. So, and Joe was just coming up, when he started working with us. And so I had this idea where we took the songs and broke them into rebus strips. So for the first one, like you see back there, Love Me Do, and you can see the images. I'll get out of the way. And then It's a Sunshiny Day, and keep on listening to the Brady Bunch. And what I did here, because they really we couldn't use the logo from the show. Okay, because this was a different thing. This was records. This had nothing to do with the show, really, except for the kids. So this was a side project for them. So we couldn't use the Brady Bunch lettering from the show. So follow in fashion of what we did for the rest of the songs, we created a rebus strip for, the kids from the Brady Bunch. And I created this little, group drawing. And Joe did all the illustrations. I mean, they're just beautiful. I mean, they're really beautiful. They're pieces of line art. We did the front and the back. And again, I'll send you these images so that you can blow them up and people can see them. But it was really fun. It was really a way of, reaching that young audience with something that would make them want to be involved. My whole thing, and we've talked about this just about every time we've done a show, I want to try and get the consumer, the listener, the fan involved with more than just reading something or taking a record out of a sleeve and putting it on a record player. If they get involved more, they tend to relate to it better than just turning the page in a magazine and you got one ad after the other. There's an article. You don't really spend any time looking at anything. And today, attention spans are even shorter.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is
we
true.
had a little bit of time. Yeah, we had a little bit of time back then. Not much, but we had more than we have today. So, I wanted to, and again, if you see something like this, you can't help but try and figure out what it says. You know what it is, and you know that there's something that it said, that it says, and you try and figure it out. If you're older or younger, it doesn't really matter. We were in that sweet spot. Now people 21 and 35, it's like maybe not, but this is a young audience. This is, the kid that's telling the gatekeeper mother that that's what they want, and they'll get it for them because they're big fans of the TV show and big fans of the Brady Bunch. So, it was really kind of interesting. I mean, when I first showed the idea to Bill Levy, I remember, I loved that guy so much, and God bless his soul, he passed away a few years ago, but he was just an incredible person and a great photographer and a really, even, one of the best creative directors I've ever had the honor of working with. And I've worked with other creative directors, but he stands far above all the rest of them. And so, he just shook his head and said, you pulled another rabbit out of the hat, because, he had no idea what he wanted to do. So anyway, this was not in our wheelhouse per se. And it just, it's so funny. Because you never know what you're going to learn when it's happening, that you'll carry on years later or something months later or a day later. That was the amazing thing about college. I learned so much in college, more than I ever realized until I went out into the real world. And little things, mentors that I had in college, mentors that I had in high school. I was very, very blessed, starting with elementary school and Sister Mary Lucity, who really had faith in me when my parents were just shaking their head going, maybe we should put him in a private school because he needs some discipline. I was like Uncle Ernie and Tommy, it had the toilet seat with the nails on it, it was just torturing things, but she had the wherewithal and the insight, to see that I did have a talent. So when Bill just said that to me, it was like just incredible. And we showed him a rough sketch. We just did a rough sketch and did a few of the songs so he could see how that would look. And then we, and it wasn't a big budget. This was a paper wrap package. It wasn't printed on board. I think that, one of the other coolest things that came out of doing this album cover was I got a chance to meet, and you probably know who I'm talking about, Jackie Mills. Do you know who he is?
No, I don't. I don't.
He was a drummer, okay, he was a jazz drummer. And he played with, Dizzy Gillespie. He played with, I made a list here so I didn't mess up, Benny Goodman, Andre Previn, Stan Getz, Harry James, and for me, I got a chance to go to Larrabee Studios where he was working on the soundtrack. Bill Levy had come into town and was at Larrabee Studio, recording studio, and he had bought, Jackie had bought the studio a few years earlier from Carole King, who owned it with this guy named Gary Coffin, and they owned this recording studio, and they sold it to Jackie, and he started producing, and he had a lot of connections, obviously, in that big band era, and he kind of hung up the drumsticks and started doing a lot of producing and running that recording studio. And so I had a chance to meet him, and it was like I was familiar with Stan Getz from, a girl from Impanema. God rest her soul. She just passed away a month ago.
Yeah, Astrud Gilberto. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And what a great song.
Yes.
What a great song. It was just, I remember when that song came out, and it was the beginning of summer. And that song came out, and it was just like, it was an anthem, and every time I hear it, sometimes I'll be up late night working and stuff, and I'll just go to YouTube and I'll put it on and just keep replaying it, because it's such a wonderful song. And she didn't have a fantastic voice. It wasn't like, oh my God, that voice is like from the Angels, but she knew how to sing that song, and it was just like Ode to Billy Joe. A lot of those, Tracy Chap, Fast Car, those kinds of songs just move you, and so he was really very, very. He was very friendly, and very down to earth. And it reminded me a lot of, and we talked about this before, Don Costa, meeting Don Costa, who produced all Frank Sinatra's hits, and he's working on Kenny Rankin. So Kenny and I go to Don's house, and he just had heart surgery about a month or two earlier, and he opens up his shirt, and he looked like Frankenstein. He was just a really funny guy, Don Costa, and just an obviously incredible producer. But so I got a chance to go over there and meet Jackie, and he had some great stories. I'll tell you, because it wasn't my generation; it was my mother's generation. But my mother was always into music. She was in the kitchen. She was a stay-at-home mom, and she always had a pot of pasta sauce going or something. And she kept the radio by the window in the kitchen, and she would play this music. And I got to love all this big band, Benny Goodman and all those guys, and so when I met Jackie, it was like, holy Toledo. I mean, this cover that was a challenge and a real, what are we going to do? I mean, because, the other thing was, I forgot to tell you this, like some of the other stuff that we had worked on that we talked about recently, there was no pictures.
Oh my, that's a challenge now, Ernie.
There were no photographs, okay? And there wasn't an internet where you could go and get pictures, just go on Kids from Brady Bunch, and there's a million pictures and all the different age groups and stuff.
Yeah, that's what I would have thought.
Yeah, but back then there wasn't. I'm talking 1970, 74. So it's a wild, it's still books. Everything is books. When I moved here to the desert, I probably got rid of about 200 books. I mean, we spent hours going through books, looking for scrap for different things that we were doing, especially because we had 5 staff illustrators, and they always were looking for scrap. There was no internet. So, we had all these books, and it was just kind of a crazy time, and being able to, like I said, have the challenge of doing that, and then being able to meet Jackie Mills. I mean, that was over the moon. I never expected that. Having this cover, I never expected that it would bring such an incredible experience. And we talked about this, Joyce. Sometimes the smallest thing, the littlest thing, has the biggest story. This is a cover that, quite honestly, I remember doing very well, but I haven't thought about it in a long time because it wasn't rock and roll. It wasn't, and as I grew up, that didn't. And it was just kind of weird because, again, like I said, you asking for this cover to be talked about sparked a whole reenactment of everything that went through my mind at the time. And then, like I said earlier, a year later, we get the nod from Sesame Street, which was, holy Toledo. Not only is this like bigger than the Brady Bunch, or the Partridge Family, because we did one for them too. But there was these 2 or 3, probably 3 albums that were at that audience. And someday we'll talk about a comp that we did for Disney, for a Disney album, and it's just beautiful. It never got done. Ended up on the editing room floor. But you just really can't win them all.
No, you can't. Those Disney albums were amazing. I remember they used to be a lot of promotional pieces from Disney.
Yeah, and they would open up and do all these kinds of different things. So,
yes.
And we had a really good connection there at Disney because we worked on all their backlot stuff. And I did some work for their home video packaging and stuff when I was doing that at a company that I worked for. I tried to work for other companies when I wasn't sure that I wanted to keep doing this. I mean, there were lulls in our industry that were, hard to, just like every other industry. I'm sure you've been through it. It just happens, and so you start. It wasn't so much doubting myself. It was more of like, do I really want to spend time doing that, or do I want to keep going the way I'm going, and understand that the ocean comes in and goes out, comes in and goes out, just like everything else. It has the whole world, everything in the world has a rhythm to it. It has a vibration to it. And sometimes you're in it, sometimes you're not. I've been very, very blessed because I've had a chance to be in it and then out of it and then in it again.
Oh my
And
heavens, I'm feeling the book of Ecclesiastes right here.
yes, exactly. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, because we've had similar experiences. I think that's one of the reasons why we accent each other so well. We both have a common love, and we can share our own personal experiences as you have, and I have. I've been very, very lucky. Again, at some point, it's up to you to pick the next ones. But at some point, I would really like us to talk about the Sesame Street live album, because it was, it was the perfect, it was the Doors Full Circle album, which was probably the most incredible construction that I had ever done for an album cover, or that was ever done for an album cover, where the whole thing folds out, becomes a zoetrope that sits on top of your. Okay, this for Sesame Street was for me that same pinnacle that I had reached, because it was like this one. This one was a two-dimensional involvement, a two-dimensional link to get more involved with the fan or the consumer, or the person that's involved with this, to get them more involved than just looking at it and trying to figure it out. This was the two-dimensional version, the Sesame Street live album, which was the first live album that they had ever done, and I was on the set.
Wow! Wow!
I met Big Bird. Okay, and I met a couple of the people that were in the cast, and it was a great experience. It was, and I was there. On the set of Sesame Street.
That is something. I'm learning all these things about you, and I think a lot of our friends on the corner too.
Yeah, well, and speaking of our friends in the corner, just to take a quick little sidebar, they are so wonderful,
aren't they? Though,
really, like, you have such wonderful. They're more than fans; they're family, and that's why the block party for me, that connects, man. That really, and you have this ability to not just talk about it, but you educate. You educate along with what you're doing. You just don't play music, and we've talked about this before. And I just don't do album covers. It would have been very easy, in some cases. Well, it wouldn't have been easy here because we didn't have any pictures. But usually, the Brady Bunch, well, you show a group shot of them and you put the name at the top, and there's a photograph, and that's it. So this was really unexpected, I'm sure, to the audience that they were appealing to. They were expecting a picture of the group when the Partridge Family, and we didn't even have a picture. So we created. Joe did this little cartoon. You'll see it in the logo we did at the top there, of the group, and we use it on the cover. I think it's the cover, back cover, one of the two. It's in some of the lyrics. I think it's It's the what is it? It's one of the songs that's back there in the Brady Bunch. Listen to the music or the songs of the Brady Bunch, and so we added to the title of the song and added that little Brady Bunch logo, and we used it a few times. And they actually put it on some stuff. They had some PR stuff that they had done, and they used it, because they didn't really have the ability to use the television logo like we talked about. There's it's two different entities. So
and that's interesting. That is very interesting. Yeah. That this is very endearing to me because even though it was not totally connected with the television show, I met Florence Henderson. My son did as well too, and
she was a wonderful lady.
Yes, just a lovely woman. She. At Hartford Community College, she was related to our dean of students and came to do a very special show. Talented and very heartfelt. When you talked to Florence, you felt like you were one of the Brady kids.
Yeah, she was the mom. it's so funny because Jackie Mills had said a very similar thing, because we didn't get a chance to meet them or talk with them. It was all Bill Levy and Jackie Mills.
Yeah.
So, but he said the same thing. There were a couple of kids that were a handful. And at such a young age, they already had agents and everything. Goes to, the child stars. They don't realize that it's like a lot of times rock stars. They don't realize that it's fleeting. Fame is fleeting. It's easy to become history.
Very easy.
No matter how famous you are, it's very fleeting. And like a lot of rock and rollers, man, they just thought the money would keep coming in. And when it didn't, it became a real bummer. So, but Jackie had said that she was just he loved working with her. I guess she had been in and out of that studio from time to time while he was working on this piece. And it was really kind of great to hear those things, because I was familiar with the TV show. I wasn't a hardcore fan. It was a younger audience, obviously, but I liked the Partridge Family. I liked, and you sort of grow up with I liked Leave It to Beaver when I was a kid. It was Leave It to Beaver and a few of those other ones, Howdy Doody, even younger, and was it Beanie and Cecil?
Oh, that they were great with the beanie caps. You used to be able to get those little caps.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I think I may have had one.
What was it? Dishonest John, or
Dishonest John.
Yeah, Dishonest John. Yeah, and they had what was the name of their boat?
Oh, that's a good one, Ernie. You got me on that one. I think the memories.
Lena.
Whoa! Now you're really bringing back memories.
Lena. Yeah, oh yeah, man. It was. Well, do you remember Brother Buzz?
I don't remember Brother Buzz.
Brother Buzz was great. He was a bee that just kind of flew around this set that changed. It was very basic, very like Carl the Carrot on the Fireman Frank show. A lot of those were local, So, but anyway, this is it's really been a great memory recurrence for me. I mean, seriously. I mean, this project, even though it was fairly simple in looking, it had so many great memories. I think about meeting Jackie. Brought back the memories of Don Costa and Kenny Rankin. God bless him, one of my best friends ever in the whole world. Left way too soon, but a lot too. And then again, reminding me of Nick Scalisi at Scholastic Books. So many great memories. And then it was like the 1-2 punch, because then, like I said, less than a year later, we're working with Sesame Street. And Sesame Street was really happening. It was really becoming a phenomenon that others imitated and emulated. But, it was a very amazing experience for me to be there on the set. Stood next to the Sesame Street street sign.
You made history even
more
I did.
So
then.
Yeah. Unfortunately, nobody had a camera to take a picture, but anyway, it was really kind of a neat thing, and thank you so much for, asking for this cover, because it brought back great memories,
You know what I'm going to ask next? You knew it.
Man, do I know? Well, let's see. It's funny. It's a Sunshine Day, okay, is good. There was also Ben was on. They did the cover of that, and for me, you're needing the rock and roll. That rock and roll is the song. Even though Candy Sugar Shop was the single that they had released for this album. I think that you need that rock and roll is, for me, the one that I would play. So hopefully you can find the album. Oh, I'm sure you can. Yeah, you can.
Leave it to me. I can dig into the vault, even though I've played it before. You know what this reminds me of? Something that Jimmy Pankow of Chicago wrote, Old Days. Because he, in the lyrics, they talk all about howdy doody, and the various things that many of us baby boomers had experienced.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're at the tail end of that. I was right at the forefront, that baby boomer movement, but yeah, you're right. I mean, and in the end, That's all there is left is memories. Hopefully your loved ones will keep you in your heart, in their heart, and in their mind. But it's like Kansas is dust in the wind. I mean, that song always brings goosebumps to me. It's that just because it's so real. It is what we do, and we've talked about this many, many times. You're looking at probably one of the most blessed people on the face of the earth. I've been with my wife 57 years. I've had a chance to make a mark. It's when I'm gone, it's going to be more than a headstone in a graveyard. It's going to be something, and you've done the same thing. What you're doing with the block party and all the other stuff that you're doing, Joyce, is going to live on forever. It's going to always be there. Somebody, 50 years from now, is going to wonder what you were all about, or this show was all about, and it'll keep happening. What you've done is you've created something that's much bigger than you. And that's really, I mean, when you can say that you've created something that's bigger than you, but not as big as everything else, but bigger than yourself. Most people, go through life. I mean, how sad to go through life and never be able to make a mark.
It is sad. It's a higher calling. I got it as a kid, and I was watching. This happened to me in Baltimore, and I think the year was '66. And I looked up the street. We had these teenagers, and they were just having fun. It was good, clean fun. They were jumping in and out of this little pool, and they had the rock and roll playing. And I never forgot that day. And I think that was part of the calling. And when the higher power calls you, it's you have to step out and you make
Yeah.
it happen. And
Yeah.
you've experienced that, Ernie.
Oh, and so have you. And you put it very, very well like that. I mean, I have memories like that too, that where well, I mean, it was amazing. I remember being in Santa Cruz, which was the big place for all the teenagers to go during the summertime. And I met this girl on the beach. I was probably 13. I was there with my parents, but you don't want to be seen with them because you look too young.
That's
So
true.
I met this girl that was about my age. And there was this moment, and we spent a couple of hours together. She was there with her family visiting from another state. And I mean, it was just like these two things coming together. And it was nothing more than just walking down the boardwalk, holding hands, and when we said goodbye, there was a kiss. And I'll never forget that, ever, ever. Bonnie is the first girl that I ever met that I fell in love with immediately. And I had girlfriends before Bonnie. It was one of those kind of I was at that age when you wonder, am I ever going to get married? Am I ever going to
Mm.
have? Who's that person? What's it going to look like? What's the whole? Who is it going to be? And as soon as I saw her, I knew right then. I was like, I think I was 18. She was 17. She likes to say she was 50. She had to once admit her age. We were at the bank, and she had to admit her age, and she was like whispering in the door, "What?
Oh,
What?"
that's funny.
So I
Oh,
finally found out. I finally found out after all these years that she had been putting me on.